I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land upon which we work, live, and gather is Mi'kmaq, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Pictou Landing has been the ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation for thousands of years. I recognize and respect the enduring presence, contributions, and cultural heritage of the Mi'kmaq people who have stewarded this land for generations. I honor their rich history, deep connection to the land, and their ongoing relationship with it. Quite separately from the land acknowledgement, I want to draw attention to the contributions of those who did not come to explore, to conquer, or possess the land, but they came to Mi'kmaq, some by force, and others seeking freedom and independence. African Nova Scotians arrived here approximately 400, actually a little bit more than 400 years ago, and from that time on, they have contributed to the infrastructure and economic wealth of the towns and cities they helped to build, but from which they could not benefit. Let us endeavor to learn more about the ways in which our own respective communities were shaped by the historic contributions of African Nova Scotians to the province of Nova Scotia. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to everyone here today in person and to those tuning in online for the Remembrance ceremony for the No. 2 Construction Battalion, Canada's largest all-black battalion. My name is Mervyn Broom, Board Chair of the Black Cultural Society, and I will be your MC today. This year marks the 33rd annual Remembrance ceremony organized by the Black Cultural Center for the Nova Scotia, who, in partnership with the Canadian Armed Forces and the town of Pictou, to host today's event. I would like to welcome our special guests seated in the first few rows, who will be introduced later on in the program. At this time, I would like to ask all of those who are able to please rise for the anthems. O Canada, followed by the National Black Anthem, Lift Every Voice, music by the 5th Canadian Division Composite Band. At this time, I would like to invite longtime advocate captain, retired only from the military, he's very, extremely busy, Kevin Jr., to offer an opening prayer. Kevin will also share his reflections on the legacy of the battalion from the perspective of someone who has served.
Honored guests, please bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father Jesus, we come before you today. We give you honor, we give you glory, we give you praise. As we gather today to celebrate and remember number 2 Construction Battalion, we ask you, Lord God, that you will bless their memory, bless the descendants. We thank you for the Black Cultural Center. Thank you for the leaders. Thank you for the elected officials who make sure that we can gather on days like this to remember the members who served. We ask that you would continue to give us strength, continue to allow us that we will be ambassadors for this cause, for the men of number 2 Construction Battalion, impacting Canadian history. We thank you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I have the pleasure of reflecting on a journey. I stood out there today and I saw the Minister of National Defense standing to take a salute. I saw a parade where we had men and women, veterans, that marched in memory of number 2. But I remember in 1998, a young Kevin Jr., just appointed as Regimental Sergeant Major, and a corporal from the Royal Canadian Regiment walked across and said, "Sir, do you know about number 2 Construction Battalion?" And I would say that my response was no. Because I was taught about the history of the Canadian Forces, but it didn't include the story of number 2 Construction Battalion. Shortly after that, I was brought to Ottawa, where I met a young Master Corporal, Alan. And there was a movie from Anthony Sherwood about number 2. Shortly after that, I was appointed as the Defense Visible Minority Advisory Group National Co-Chair. And because I was in a position of influence, I was able to get together and reestablish a national group. And we came to do a strategic planning meeting in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It just happened to be on the weekend of the celebration of number 2. With individuals like Dor Gibson, Howard Sajan, young Captain Howard Sajan. You probably remember him as the Minister of National Defense. And we came and we saw a parade that should have been a parade, but it wasn't what we expected. But 2 Chief Warrant Officers made sure that we had a parade that was fitting to the memory of number 2. Doug Ruck took me aside and he taught me a bit more about number 2. At the time, the director that was there took me and said, "Kevin, that's what it's all about." That made me a champion of number 2. I moved forward and I was blessed to be selected to be on the National Apology Advisory Committee. And through that experience with members that are here today, Kathy Grant, CN, and others, we were able to stand on the hollow ground where the men of number 2 trained. Where the Prime Minister of Canada said, for the anti-black racism that you experience, we are sorry. What a journey. Today we are here, and I see members of 4ESR perpetuating the memories of number 2. I see Rear Admiral Olivier, Commander of the Order of Military Merit. Something I never dreamed possible. But we stand on the shoulders of the men who served in number 2. This is a reflection I'm proud to deliver, knowing that we're able to learn from these men. And this is not black history. This is Canadian history. Yeah.
So true what you said. It's Canadian history, and add to it, it is history. And let's not, we forget. You know, as we go through life, we get very comfortable, and we forget things. And then we wonder why certain things happen again. Let's not forget. At this time, I would like to welcome Russell Gross, Chief Executive Officer of the Black Cultural Center, to offer an official welcome. Russell has played a key role in the remembrance of number 2 Construction Battalion over the past few decades. He's done an awful lot. Please come up, Russ.
Well, good morning, everyone, on this beautiful morning in Pictou. We couldn't have ordered better weather. Over the years, we've faced weather that will make you think. But at any rate, I'm sure that it pales in comparison to what the men of the number 2 had to face. On behalf of the Black Cultural Center for Nova Scotia and the Black Cultural Society, it's my honor to welcome you to the 33rd Annual Number 2 Construction Battalion Remembrance Ceremony. We gather here in Pictou on sacred ground in a place that carries memory, sacrifice, courage, and truth. This year is especially significant as it marks 110 years since the formation of Number 2 Construction Battalion. Canada's first and only all-black battalion-sized military unit, authorized right here on July 5th, 1916. Number 2 was born out of determination and injustice. Black men across the country wanted to serve Canada during the First World War, but many were turned away because of the color of their skin. They were told directly and indirectly that their service was not wanted. But they didn't give up. Their families did not give up, and their community didn't give up. And because they continued to press forward, Number 2 Construction Battalion was formed. I want to acknowledge the presence of some special dignitaries here today. I want to welcome and recognize the Honorable Twyla Gross, Minister of African Nova Scotia Affairs, members of Parliament that are present, members of the Legislative Assembly, His Worship Mayor Jim Ryan, who welcomed us here to Pictou each and every year, senior representatives of the Canadian Armed Forces, Brigadier Generals and Rear Admirals, and the RCMP. And of course, you, descendants, families, veterans, friends. Your presence here today matters. It shows that the legacy of Number 2 Construction Battalion is not just Black history. It's a Canadian story. It's a military story. It's a Nova Scotia story and a story of service, sacrifice, and most importantly, perseverance. The men of Number 2 came to Nova Scotia came from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario, Western Canada, the Caribbean, and the United States, which is remarkable that battalions at that time weren't that multinational. Although they were organized as a segregated, non-combatant unit, their contribution was essential. Overseas, they served with the Canadian Forestry Corps in France. They cut timber, built roads, supported rail operations, maintained water systems, and carried out hard labor that helped sustain the war effort. You see, at that time, they were seen as being marginalized as a labor force. But if you look at today's Canadian Armed Forces, engineers are highly regarded. They set a trend at that time. They were given tools when they deserved full equality. They were given segregation when they already earned the right to serve. Yet they answered with dignity, they answered with courage, they answered with service to our country. When they returned home, there was no grand welcome, no proper ceremony, no full recognition. Far too long, the story was missing from our Canadian history narrative. But the story never disappeared because descendants remembered, the community remembered, families remembered, and there were leaders who refused to let Canada forget this story. Today we honor those who kept this story alive when it wasn't easy to do so. We remember the late Senator Calvin Rock, whose work helped bring the Black Battalion into national consciousness. We remember the late Captain George Borden, and the late Francis Dorrington, and the late Mayor of Pictou, Lawrence LeBlanc, and the Honorable Eleanor McKay, who helped ensure that this history was recognized and respected. Many of you might have seen the monument that was placed there over 33 years ago, that still is a beacon of hope and legacy of the number 2. I also want to acknowledge the work and the courageous work of Douglas Ruck, who couldn't be here with us today, that he carries the torch forward, and the work of the many employees of the Black Cultural Center over the years, like Dr. Henry Bishop and our guest speaker that we're going to have later today, Cian Floyd. These are individuals that not only lived this, but they had a passion to ensure that the story kept moving forward. In 2022, Canada took an important historic step when the Government of Canada delivered a national apology to the descendants and families of No. 2 Construction Battalion for the systemic anti-Black racism that these men endured during and long after their service. That apology did not erase the harm, but it did affirm an important truth. It affirmed what descendants had always known. These men served with honor, and Canada failed to honor them properly. National Apology had an advisory committee, and that report helped shape that moment and called for remembrance, education, commemoration, meaningful action to ensure that legacy would not be forgotten. Since that apology, over 4 years ago, there has been dedicated work to keep the legacy alive through descendants, community, and through the Black Cultural Center for Nova Scotia. This continued national engagement has been powerful in ensuring that the legacy remains important. The ceremony program itself reflects a continued partnership amongst community, government, and descendants in honoring this 110-year milestone. It also is remarkable that the momentum has continued for successive ministers of national defense. As Kevin had mentioned, the Honorable Agent Sergeant, the Honorable Anita Anand, the Honorable Bill Blair, and the incoming Minister of Defense, or current Minister of Defense, the Honorable David McGuinty, who we'll hear from later today. This continuity matters and shows that this legacy is not tied to one moment, one apology, or to one government. It must be a part of ongoing national presence, a commitment to remember, a commitment to create change. And today, 110 years later, we do more than look back. We look forward with a responsibility. Because remembrance is not simply the act of saying their names. Remembrance is a promise that their names still matter. Remembrance is a commitment that their sacrifice will still teach us. Remembrance is the courage to tell the truth, even when the truth is hurtful and painful. As we stand here together today, I offer this thought. A nation that does not truly honor its heroes by remembering them once, it honors them by carrying their courage into the future, by teaching the truth to the next generation, and by ensuring that the injustice they endured never happens again. To the descendants that are here with us today for this ceremony, we think about your fathers, we think about your grandfathers, your great-grandfathers, your uncles, your ancestors. Their service lives on through you. Their dignity stands with us, their courage continues to guide us, and to all of us that are gathered here today, may we leave here with a renewed commitment to remember and honor and carry the legacy of No. 2 Construction Battalion forward with pride, truth, and purpose. I hope you enjoy the rest of today's program, and thank you for attending.
Thank you, Russell. Many things you said there is extremely important. And I say extremely important because I know we're here for honoring the No. 2 Construction Battalion, who happen to be black. But when you break it down of all the things that they stood for, integrity, character, perseverance, and everything, it covers all races. All. At this time, I would like to invite Halifax Deputy Police Chief Dean Simmons to read our memorial list of those members of the No. 2 Construction Battalion who paid the ultimate sacrifice, followed by the 110-year Reflection Act of Remembrance by the Honorable Dr. Wayne Adams. Good morning. In remembrance, Private Clarence Ash, Truro, Nova Scotia. Private Edward Augustus, Liverpool, Nova Scotia. Private Percy Adalbert Berryman, Arcadia, Nova Scotia. Private John Blizzard, St. John, New Brunswick. Private William Boone, Jenkins, Alberta. Private Andrew James Brown, Brantford, Ontario. Lance Corporal George Dean Brown, Barbados. Sapper Charles Henry Bryant, Hamilton, Ontario. Private Vincent Carberry, Atherville, Nova Scotia. Private Early Cooper, Detroit, Michigan. Private Arthur Cromwell, Weymouth Falls, Nova Scotia. Private Charles Henry Cromwell, Danvers, Nova Scotia. Private Cindy David, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Private James Don, Barbados. Private Thomas Goffigan, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Private Belfield Elliott Hall, Barbados. Private Major Harston, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Private Edwin Lund Hay, Trinidad. Private Michael Jackson, Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. Private William Jackson, Antigonish, Nova Scotia. Private William Charles Jackson, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Private William Cullum, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Private John Lambert, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Private Walter James Lucas, Dresden, Ontario. Private John Mansfield, Bridgetown, Nova Scotia. Private Aubrey Mitchell, British West Indies. Private John Mitchell, Michigan. Private Stephen Morris, Detroit, Michigan. Private Chester Pinnell, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Private Reuben Alexander Smith, Weymouth Falls, Nova Scotia. Private Charles Summer, Atherville, Nova Scotia. Sapper Nathaniel Stewart, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Sergeant Charles Stewart, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Private George Sylvie, New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. Private Edward Washington, Fredericton, New Brunswick. Sapper James Douglas Wims,
Salt Spring Island, British Columbia. Private Robert Loman, Montreal, Quebec. Private Sylvester Williams, Detroit, Michigan. Private Tillman McKinley Williams, Detroit, Michigan. Private William Wilson, Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Thank you, Dean. Good morning, everybody. An act of remembrance. Today we pause in solemn remembrance of the men of the No. 2 Construction Battalion whose service, sacrifice, courage, dignity continue to speak across many generations. 110 years ago, in the face of exclusion, I should say, and discrimination, and denied opportunity, Black men from Nova Scotia, from across Canada, from abroad, and from communities connected by a shared struggle for freedom and belonging answered the call to serve. They stepped forward where their country did not always step forward for them. They offered their hands, their strength, their skills, and their lives in service to Canada and to the cause of freedom. They participated in critical timber operations and the labor infrastructure of war. They served with discipline and pride. They carried not only the tools of labor, but also the heavy burden of racism, rejection, and injustice. Yet they endured. They stood as soldiers. They stood as builders. They stood as sons, fathers, brothers, husbands, neighbors, and yes, citizens. They stood for a Canada that had not yet fully recognized them. And by their service, they helped shape the Canada we continue to strive to become. We remember those who served overseas. We remember those who labored behind the lines. We remember those who returned home to communities that carried both pride and pain. We remember those who did not return. We remember the families who waited, who worried, who mourned, and who preserved the memory of their loved ones when history too often remained silent. We remember the African Nova Scotian communities, the Black communities across Canada, and the descendants who kept their stories alive through faith, memory, oral history, ceremony, and love. We remember that the legacy of No. 2 Construction Battalion is not only a military story, it is a story of resistance, resilience, perseverance, and nation building. It's the story of men who were told they were not wanted, yet proved they were needed. It's a story of service with a full recognition, sacrifice, with unequal treatment and patriotism in the face of injustice. It is also a story of honor, reclaimed. Today, as we mark 110 years service since the formation of the No. 2 Construction Battalion, we commit ourselves to remembering them not only in words, but in action. We remember them by teaching their history. We remember them by speaking their names. We remember them by honoring their descendants. We remember them by challenging racism wherever it remains. We remember them by building a more just, inclusive, and truthful Canada. Their courage must never be forgotten. Their service must never be diminished. Their sacrifice must never again be overlooked. They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. For the No. 2 Construction Battalion, for their families, for their descendants, and for all who continue to carry their legacy forward, we will remember them. Thank you very much.
Today we remember them. The late retired Captain George Borden was noted as being a champion of Black Canadian military history and worked to support the research of Dr. Calvin Rupp. He was a decorated member of the Royal Canadian Air Force, a writer, a poet, and one of the poems he wrote was entitled Black Soldiers Lament. Please listen to the audio presentation of the reading of the Black Soldiers Lament, narrated by his brother, well-known playwright and actor, Dr. Walter Borden.
Bugle called, and forth we went, to serve the crown, our backs far bent, and build whate'er that must be done, but ne'er to fire an angry gun. No heroes we, no, nay, not one. With deep lament we did our job, despite the shame our manhood robbed. We built and fixed again, to prove our worth as proud black men, and hasten sure the Kaiser's end. From Scotia port to Seaport Square, across to France, the conflict there, at Ville-la-Joux and Place Ferrand, for God and King, to right the wrong. The number 2, 600 strong. Stripped to the waist and sweated chest, midday's reprieve, much needed rest. We dug and hauled and lifted high, from trenches deep towards the sky. Non-fighting troops, and yet we die. The peace restored, the battle won. Black sweat and toil had beat the Hun. Black blood was spilled, black bodies made. For metals brave, no black was named. Yet proud were we, our pride unshamed. But time will bring forth other wars, then give to us more daring chores, that we might prove our courage strong, preserve the right, repel the wrong, and proud we'll sing the battle song.
Please be seated. At this time in the program, it is very fitting that we lay wreaths as a symbolic gesture honoring those who have made significant contributions and sacrifices. As I call your name, please proceed to lay your wreath. And I would ask that you go down the aisles to get your wreath and leave, and then come up through the center so there won't be a confusion of everyone going back and forth. MP Bienvenue Olivier Natamba. Brigadier General John McDonald, representing DND, CAF, CDS, and Lieutenant Colonel Mike Blanchette, 5th Division. Lieutenant Colonel Ian Summerfield and CWO Robert Gilbert for ESR. Black Cultural Center Society. public who would like to lay a wreath, please do. It is now my pleasure to welcome our honored guests to share remarks. We are grateful to have the Honorable David McGuinty, Minister of National Defense, joining us today as we commemorate the 110th anniversary of the establishment of the No. 2 Construction Battalion.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. It's a profound honor to join you here this morning in celebrating the enduring legacy of No. 2 Construction Battalion. Heartfelt thanks to the Black Cultural Center and the community here in Pictou for your warm welcome and for your unwavering commitment to preserving the legacy of No. 2 Construction Battalion. To stand before you here today as the first Minister of National Defense to participate in this ceremony is a privilege. It carries deep meaning. C'est un immense privilège d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui afin de rendre hommage aux hommes du Battalion de construction numéro 2. Learning about this battalion has left a lasting impression. Its story was absent from many classrooms and far too often missing from the history that we all were taught. Only years later did many Canadians come to learn about the more than 600 Black Canadians who served in this battalion, their remarkable contributions during the First World War, and the lack of recognition they received in communities across the country when they came home. Their stories remind us that racism shaped both who was allowed to serve and whose service was remembered. Many people of my generation never had the opportunity to learn about No. 2 Construction Battalion while we were growing up. Let me be clear in saying that No. 2 is a vital part of Canadian history. Leur histoire fait partie de notre histoire. Elle fait partie de l'histoire du Canada. Their stories deserve to be heard. They deserve to be learned. And they deserve to be remembered and celebrated. Whatever our backgrounds, we can all take inspiration from the strength, the dedication, and the perseverance that these men showed. Incredibly, when they were turned away at recruitment centers, many traveled long distances to try again at a different center. That was their determination. That was their commitment to Canada. When they were denied the chance to serve in the front lines, they still found a way to serve their country. They cut timber and they built roads. They maintained equipment, moved supplies, and carried out the difficult work that made Allied success possible. The work they did was vital to the Allied war effort and helped open doors for future generations of military members. Today, members of the Canadian Armed Forces proudly carry that legacy of service forward. They've answered the same call to serve that these men did 110 years ago tomorrow. And they are driven by that same sense of purpose to support their comrades, serve this beautiful country, to help make the world a better place, even under the most difficult of circumstances. I want to recognize the members of this community who have helped preserve and promote Number 2's legacy, including the late Senator Calvin Ruck, descendants of the men who served, and others who have worked with the Black Cultural Centre for Nova Scotia to preserve the battalion's memory. Through your advocacy, perseverance, and dedication, an essential chapter of Canadian history has been restored to its very rightful place. So as we gather to honor the men of Number 2 Construction Battalion, we also celebrate the remarkable work that's been done to make sure their stories are never forgotten, and the ongoing efforts to ensure our institutions, including the Canadian Armed Forces, never repeat the mistakes of the past. Before continuing, it's important to recognize the members of the newly established External Ministerial Advisory Committee on Anti-Black Racism. Merci d'avoir accepté cette importante responsabilité au service d'un avenir meilleur pour notre équipe de la défense. As members, your willingness to lend your experience, your expertise, and your leadership to this work will help shape a stronger and more inclusive defense team. Those members include as co-chairs Russell Gross, Colonel Barry Pitcher, and the members Louis-Edgar Jean-François, Raymond Edwards, Sian Foyne, Doreen Gibson, Juanita de Souza, Hulite, Kevin Jr., Razin Mabungu, Rosemary Sadier, and Craig Smith. Please join me in recognizing and thanking them for their commitment. I had a chance to meet with them yesterday for our founding meeting, and I was struck by the incredible depth of talent and experience they bring to the table. We're counting on them to make sure we get things better. One of the most meaningful aspects of the Government of Canada's apology in 2022 was that it was never intended to be the end of the conversation. Rather, it marked the beginning of an ongoing commitment. That commitment continues today through the work of this committee, through the Legacy Fund, and through continued engagement with descendants and Black communities across Canada. As Minister of National Defence, I have a responsibility to ensure the perspectives shared through this process continue to shape meaningful action across the defence team. Every person who chooses to serve Canada deserves to do so in safety, with dignity, and with the full support of the institution they serve. Black Canadians have strengthened our military for generations, just as they did during the First World War. Notre diversité est une force. Elle nous rend plus forts, plus résilients et plus efficaces. The strength of the Canadian Armed Forces has always come from its people, from their experience, their perspectives, their talents, and their unwavering commitment to serving Canada. The men of Number 2 Construction Battalion continue to inspire us. Their descendants continue to inspire us. And their legacy continues to guide us as we build the Canadian Armed Forces that is stronger, more inclusive, and worthy of their example. In his poem, Black Soldier's Lament, Captain George Borden wrote, "We built and fixed again to prove our worth as proud Black men." Those words remind us that patriotism is not measured by the opportunities a country gives us, but by the commitment to serve it, even when those opportunities are denied. The men of Number 2 Construction Battalion never stopped bleeding in Canada. It's absolutely remarkable. Today, Canada remembers them with the honor they have always deserved. Their story stands where it always belonged, not at the margins of our history, but at its heart. May we honor their service. May we carry forward their legacy. May we be inspired by their commitment. And may we continue building a Canada and a Canadian Armed Forces that reflects the values they believed in, the country they chose to serve, and the future they helped make possible. Nous nous souviendrons d'eux. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister McGinty. We appreciate those words, powerful words, and I know it means a lot. The ones who are watching from heaven might say that, and to the people here. Thank you. Honorable Twyla Gross, Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs and Public Service Commission.
Good morning. I want to acknowledge the Honorable David McGinty, MP Benvenu Olivier Mutamba, members of the Nova Scotia Legislative Assembly, His Worship Mayor Jim Ryan, our distinguished military officials, and representatives from the Black Cultural Center and the Black Cultural Society. I also want to recognize all family members, invited guests, community partners, and everyone joining us today. Being here in Pictou today to remember the men of the No. 2 Construction Battalion is a real honor. Before anything else, I want to recognize the families and descendants of the battalion. This day is yours first and always. For a long time, your families held on to what mattered. Names, photos, medals, letters, the stories people told, and the stories they couldn't. You carried the silences too, and the hurt that came with them, especially when this country failed to show the respect your loved ones had earned. When institutions forgot, you did not. When history books left them out, you said their names anyway. You kept the truth alive. That is why we are here today. To the veterans and those currently serving, to representatives of the Canadian Armed Forces and the Royal Canadian Legion, to the Black Cultural Center for Nova Scotia, to community leaders, elected officials, and everyone gathered with us today, thank you for coming together in remembrance. 110 years ago, Black men from Nova Scotia, from across Canada, from the United States, and from the Caribbean stepped forward to serve. Canada was calling for sacrifice. They answered. Yet too many of them were met with a message that cut to the bone. Not you. Not because courage was missing, and not because skill was lacking, not because loyalty was in question. They were turned away because they were Black. That is a hard truth at the center of this history. These men were prepared to defend freedoms they themselves were not granted. They wanted to wear the uniform, even while racism insisted that they should not. Still, they step forward. Number 2 Construction Battalion stands as proof of something we've always known. African Nova Scotian communities and Black communities across Canada had sons and fathers, brothers and uncles, neighbors and friends ready to contribute, and contribute they did. They built roads, they moved timber, they supported the war effort overseas. They served in harsh conditions with discipline and with pride. But they were made to carry more than tools. They carried the weight of serving a country that often accepted their labor without accepting their full equality. And when they came home, the recognition they deserved did not meet them there. That harm did not end when the war ended. It moved through families. It marked communities. It became one part of a wider pattern: anti-Black racism, colonialism, exclusion, erasure. A pattern African Nova Scotians and people of African descent know far too well. Today, though, is not only about what was withheld, it is also about what was endured. Their honor endured. Their names endured, their legacy endured, and their descendants endured, carrying their story forward with strength, with care, and with grace. Each time we gather like this, we do more than look back. We correct what was left out. We mend the record. We say it plainly: these men mattered then. Yes. They matter now, and they will matter for generations still to come. A country cannot become better by refusing to face its own history. So we face it. We face the racism that blocked Black men from serving on equal terms. We face the injustice that denied them honor. We face the fact that discrimination did not simply fade away with time. And we face what that requires of us today. Because remembrance is not a quiet thing. It is not a passive thing. Remembrance asks something of each of us. It asks us to teach our children the full story and to honor Black service as part of the foundation of Canada's history. It asks governments and institutions to look directly at the systems that still put up barriers. And it asks every one of us to choose what kind of country we are building right now. The men of the number 2 Construction Battalion helped build Canada's war effort. Now it is on us to help build the Canada these brave men deserved. So here in Pictou, we say it clearly. We see you, we remember you, and we will make sure that generations after us know exactly who you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Gross. And I'll say, His Worship, Jim Ryan, Mayor of Pictou.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowman. Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to start by welcoming you, if I haven't already, to the town of Pictou. Minister McGuinty, Minister Gross, descendants and families, special guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here today to help commemorate the 110th anniversary of the formation of the number 2 Construction Battalion. This particular ceremony of remembrance, initiated through the efforts of Dr. Calvin Ruck, as already mentioned 33 years ago, has ever since been an important event for this town. On behalf of the town, I want to thank Russell Gross and the Black Cultural Society, Department of National Defence, Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada, and Parks Canada for their continued efforts in keeping this important part of Canadian history alive. Anytime I walk past the beautiful monument erected in Call Avenue in 1993, I can't help but feel a great sense of pride. And I reflect on what the energy must have been like at that exact spot in the summer of 1916. As the first of the 600 plus soldiers who served the number 2 began to assemble. Aside from the shared air of commitment, I expect there would have been feelings of trepidation, mixed with excitement, as they were a collection of brave men from across the continent, who most likely didn't even know one another before then, but who shared a common vision to serve their country. A country that until that point told them, you are not needed, you are not wanted. I doubt that this group of men could possibly have realized that more than 100 years later, they would be seen as a symbol of what is important in all societies, but importantly, Canadian society. Commitment to equality and for service to others. Over the past few years, I had the honor of visiting other Nova Scotia communities for dedications of monuments in honor of members of the No. 2 Construction Battalion and their service. Each of these monuments serve to remind us that as a society, we must continue to educate and commemorate if we are going to be reinforcing the important lessons that we've learned through future generations. Although these men spent only a few months in our little town, they will always be remembered among the brave Pictonians who went on to serve their country with honor. I just want to end by saying thank you to St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church for once again providing this beautiful space for this important ceremony. It's greatly appreciated, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. Next, I would like to call Brigadier General John MacDonald, representing the Chief of Defense Staff. Minister McGuinty, Minister Gross, Your Worship, Mayor Ryan, colleagues, friends, and distinguished guests. I am honored to join you today on behalf of the Chief of Defense Staff, General Carignan, and the Canadian Armed Forces as we gather here in Pictou, the birthplace of No. 2 Construction Battalion, to mark the 110th anniversary of its authorization on 5 July 1916. We come together not only to remember a military unit, but to honor a remarkable story of determination, service, and courage. As we've heard this morning, the men of No. 2 Construction Battalion volunteered to serve Canada during the First World War, at a time when they were turned away because of the color of their skin. Faced with discrimination and exclusion, they did not abandon their desire to serve. Instead, they persisted. Their efforts and the efforts of Black communities across Canada and beyond led to the creation of Canada's first and only all-Black battalion-sized military formation. Although designated as a construction battalion, their contribution was essential to the war effort. Serving with the Canadian Forestry Corps in France, they helped provide the timber and infrastructure that supported operations at the front. Their work was demanding, dangerous, and indispensable. Yet their legacy extends far beyond the tasks they performed. The men of No. 2 Construction Battalion demonstrated dignity in the face of prejudice, professionalism in the face of adversity, and commitment to a country that had not yet fully recognized them as equals. In doing so, they helped lay the foundation for more inclusive Canadian Armed Forces and indeed a better Canada. Today we also recognize the families, descendants, historians, community leaders, and advocates who
whose dedication has ensured that this story is not forgotten. Because of your efforts, new generations of Canadians are learning what the battalion sacrifices and accomplishments. As members of the Canadian Armed Forces, we have a responsibility not only to remember this history, but to learn from it. The story of No. 2 Construction Battalion reminds us that the strength of our military lies in the diversity of those who serve and in the values of dignity, respect, and inclusion that we strive to uphold every day. Because today we know that personal characteristics crucial to the modern profession of arms, such as talent, a willingness to put service before self, and patriotism, belong to no single race, creed, or gender. On this 110th anniversary, let us honor the members of No. 2 Construction Battalion by preserving their legacy, sharing their story, and ensuring their example continues to inspire future generations. Lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier General McDonald. Next, Lieutenant Colonel Ian Summerfield, CO 4ESR.
Good afternoon, Minister McGuinty, distinguished guests, friends, and descendants of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. I'd like to begin by expressing how deeply privileged we are at 4ESR to hold the responsibility of perpetuating the No. 2 Construction Battalion, and how honored we are to share in the history of such an extraordinary battalion. The members of the No. 2 endured significant hardship before, during, and after the war. Their contributions were too often overlooked, and their stories omitted from many historical accounts. For far too long, they were not given the recognition they deserved. It's our honor as a regiment to stand alongside this community, the community that has worked tirelessly to ensure the memory of the No. 2 is not lost. Last year, we donated and dedicated the commemorative plaque of honor, which is hanging on the wall behind me in this corner. The plaque gives equal honor to the members of No. 2 who died serving their country, a country who refused their service. For the 110th anniversary, we wanted to do something different and something special. This past year has been a very busy operational year for our 4ESR. We deployed people across the globe, including over half our officers and a quarter of our NCOs and our members. With this scale of operational reach, we wanted to use this opportunity to honor the No. 2 and spread the message of its great history. So we sent this flag beside me, we sent it around the world. This flag traveled to Kuwait, Jordan, across Europe multiple times, and to several other locations around the world. In one instance, a member volunteered to carry it to La Joux in the Jura Mountains of France. While there, he laid flowers at memorials and met with local officials to discuss the battalion and its legacy in that region. This flag, after this, we'll take it back to Gagetown, and it's going to be folded and mounted in a shadow box with some of those pictures and mementos and donated to the Black Cultural Center of Nova Scotia. The No. 2 flag is not just a historic symbol. When it flies, it's a visible demonstration of the remembrance in action. Each time the flag is flown, it provides an opportunity to tell the story of the No. 2 and to share the story of the brave men who fought to serve their country. In closing, let me say this clearly. The legacy of the No. 2 Construction Battalion is a legacy of strength, resilience, and service. It was great then, and it is great today. It is not forgotten. It lives on through the descendants and friends of the No. 2 and through 4ESR and the Canadian Military Engineers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I call upon Assistant Commissioner Dan Morrow, Commanding Officer, Nova Scotia, RCMP.
Before we begin, I just wanted to actually acknowledge Minister Gross's comments. They really resonated with me, and I'm I'm going to look for ways to amplify them as my current position of influence. So. Good afternoon, everyone, and distinguished guests. Thank you to the Canadian Armed Forces, the Black Cultural Centre, and the organizers of today's meaningful event. The Nova Scotia RCMP has been proud to support the No. 2 Battalion tribute since it began, and we're pleased to be a part of this event again this year. As the years go by, I find myself increasingly aware of just how vital events like this are. Moments where we pause to reflect on and recognize those whose contributions have helped shape our country and communities. It's truly a privilege to be here today. This tribute provides an important opportunity to recognize the historic contributions of the No. 2 Construction Battalion, particularly within the broader Canadian military history. The RCMP and the Canadian Armed Forces share common values and a strong, standing partnership in serving Canadians, both abroad and at home. This is exactly what the members of the No. 2 Construction Battalion did, even though they were denied the chance to serve on the front line, due to the color of their skin. They played a critical role in serving Canadians by building infrastructure, maintaining essential services like water supply, and supporting military operations in countless ways. Their service was not without danger. Many worked in exposed conditions, and some paid the ultimate price or were injured while serving Canada with honor and dedication. Their story reflects a powerful desire for inclusion, something that resonates not only historically, but also with African Canadians who have served and continue to serve in the RCMP ever since the battalion's birth 110 years ago. I'm always humbled by an overwhelming respect for those who've been, like members of the battalion, trailblazers inside and outside of our own organization. Their legacy is deeply connected to those who came before them, including the men of the battalion, who remain a lasting symbol of courage, resilience, and perseverance in the face of systemic racism. On behalf of the Nova Scotia RCMP, I wish you all the best in today's celebrations honoring the brave men of the battalion, and I thank you for inviting me to participate here today.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. Now we're going to have a musical selection by the 5th Canadian Division Composite Band.
Thank you.
Cian Foy. Cian is a respected historian, researcher, writer, and public history advocate whose work has helped deepen national understanding of the history and legacy of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. At the urging of the late Senator Dr. Calvin Rock, Cian began research in the battalion and has since spent countless hours documenting, writing, and sharing its multi-layered story. His graduate research, The Underside of Glory, Afro-Canadian enlistment in the Canadian Expeditionary Force, 1914 through to 1917, has become an important reference point for scholars, institutions, and communities. He also served as historical researcher for Anthony Sherwood's docudrama, Honor Before Glory, and has advised on exhibitions related to the No. 2 Construction Battalion at the University of Ottawa, Library and Archives Canada, and the Black Cultural Centre for Nova Scotia. Cian was also a member of the National Advisory Committee on the Government of Canada's apology for the treatment of the No. 2 Construction Battalion, helping shape the principle and historical materials connected to that important moment of recognition and remembrance. For his dedication to preserving and advancing this history, Cian has received the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal and has been recognized in the Senate of Canada. Please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Cian Foy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Invited guests, curious onlookers, members of the Armed Forces, wonderful engineers. Thank you all so very, very much for letting me be here and have the opportunity to think and reflect on a subject that has not left me alone for a lot of years, and I really don't want it to anyway. I have to ask, because I can't help myself, the musicians, was that Hymn Freedom you just played? Sure. Yes. Oh my Lord, y'all know Hymn Freedom? Yes. Oscar Peterson?
Yes. Yes.
I will not step on Lift Every Voice, but before Lift Every Voice was a thing, Hymn Freedom was the tune of the Civil Rights Movement.
Yes.
And absolutely gorgeous. But I should have asked you for something else earlier, but I won't. When Russell asked me to speak, I was really puzzled as to what I should do, because I can go on for days about this subject, and Kevin has learned to be quiet. And we started to chat a little bit, and Russell said maybe sort of do a history of the history, which sounded easy when he said it, and then the history geek says, oh my God, how do we do a history of a history when it's not history yet? But anyway, I kind of stepped back and I thought, maybe I could introduce you to a gentleman who went by the last name Wins. And in January 1919, just as the No. 2 Construction Battalion was coming home, men are being put on trains and sent back to their places. Their war service gratuities are being paid out. This Wins guy was working in the Canadian War Records office. He wrote to the No. 2, looking for the last war diary. He's looking for the war diary. The war diaries was a record every unit would keep. He's got all the other ones. They've got them all, except for this last one. Wins says in his letter, the absence of this historic data will hamper the battalion's ability to receive due recognition from future historians. You see, what I should have asked the band for was like one of those ominous, Phantom of the Opera chords. I couldn't think of a really better way to start that, to start the moment that I have here with you today than to mention that. The absence of that war diary, I do not believe at all, is the reason why the number 2 was excluded from Canada's so-called official history of the First World War. Its absence didn't prevent people in Ontario from having a plaque mounted in the Ontario legislature for the number 2 construction battalion. It didn't stop the number 2 from being included in Nova Scotia's official history of the First World War. And sometimes I wonder if it was on the desk of the author and somebody mistakenly threw it in the fireplace for kindling or something, but I don't know for sure. The absence of this history in our minds today, I ask myself, this history must have been living with the men of the number 2 construction battalion. People come back from all kinds of experiences and they talk about their experiences. And so I allowed myself to imagine, maybe somewhere, the Allison brothers and the States brothers went back to their jobs as quarrymen. And they were sitting around in a quarry or a gypsum mine talking about Charlie Soane. We're talking about, and this is wonderful, by the way, folks. This is really special. Any of the men who passed. I wonder too if Alexander Brahma, who in 1915, 1916 was so excited to serve Canada that he said that he would go out there for free if somebody would just take him. But they didn't. But the number 2 took him. So I wonder when he went back to his job as a coal miner, is the story of the number 2 hammered into a coal face somewhere still underneath the Atlantic Ocean for us to find one day. I wonder if Kawaja Karachi, not your typical Nova Scotian name, black Nova Scotian name, I wonder if Kawaja Karachi took a job, he was a stoker, took a job on a steamer, sailed his way all the way back to his home in Steamer Point, which is off the present-day Aden in Yemen. And there he showed his brothers the uniform that he wore during the war for this curious country called Canada. I really want to imagine that sleeping car porters like William and Percy Thomas whispered stories in the ears of little children trying to sleep as their train rattled its way all the way across Canada. I wonder if Joseph Roger Butler, a former Buffalo soldier, who thought in the beginning of the war that he might make a good officer with a little bit of training, who he too was refused. I wonder if he was on that train with them and stopped back at his home in Edmonton in Alberta before returning backwards a little bit towards Winnipeg, where he settled and started a new life. I should have known better when I knew that I was going to be in a room with Minister Gross and Minister Adams, that they would go into places before me, but the minister has done it for us already today. The story lived. It lived with people. It lived in the hearts. It was whispered. It was on mantelpieces. It was on bedside tables. It was put in little boxes. Is Mary Beth with us today? Hello. It was put in little boxes and safely tucked away underneath beds. So how many years later will Mary Beth be cleaning out her grandfather's house and find an absolute treasure trove of photographs and documents, which, you know, we all have things, and sometimes people think we're pack rats or collectors, but sometimes there's a greater wisdom in that we will never understand. So it's in these places that the story lived. And I can't help but imagining that it lived, that people talked about it, that, you know, oh, Uncle so-and-so, yeah, he was in the good old number 2. But it wasn't really until, I'd say, like, when we started coming into the 60s and 70s, 80s, when a few historians started writing it. Most of the time, it was written alongside of larger surveys. So, you know, black people did this, and black people did that, and black people did that. You'll find this in Winks's book. A few authors, a few historians wrote it alongside of other histories about indigenous people who served in the First World War, of Asian people, Asian Canadians who served in the First World War. But the number 2 never really stood alone in those writings as its own history. It's not until we get to around 1981, and this, when I learned this, I was just mortified, in a good way, if that's possible, that the Society for the Protection and the Preservation of Black Culture in Nova Scotia was perfect. The first public event that they did was a reunion for the number 2 Construction Battalion and black veterans of the First World War. The very first event that they did. And in leading to creating that moment, they broke down the number 2 Construction Battalion nominal roll. They looked to see where people had come from. They made phone calls all across Canada into the United States to tell people to come. And they had also the wisdom to say that it's not just the number 2. It's other black veterans. And that's like, not just simply giving recognition to those men that served outside of the number 2, it's placing the number 2 in the full context of black service during the First World War. Because we know there's black men who served in other units, but for the society to say, you know what, we're not just going to say, no, we'll deal with you later. Imagine, for history books, maybe for you too. At that reunion, we find a man, Percy Richards. Percy Richards of St. John, New Brunswick. Am I getting that right, St. John? I've been in Ottawa for a while last night. Percy Richards appears in one of the most documented stories of the number 2, of the anti-black racism that existed and the experience. I'm not sure if it's his brother, I'm not sure if it's cousin, but anyway, there's another man named John Richards. He was a shipping agent. He had already had the experience of putting horses on board ships and sending them overseas to work with the Canadian Expeditionary Force. Horses were a major source of power. But you need trained and skilled people to manage horses, and you gotta have some real serious people if you're gonna put them on a ship. He knew that there was black men amongst those horsemen that he sent, and when they got to England, they were enlisting in. He writes this to the Minister of National Defense, or Minister of Militia. The minister wrote back to say, hey, there's no color bar, you know. He wrote because black men in New Brunswick were facing these problems. No, there's no color bar. Richards was amongst the men who then, and I can imagine it, holding this letter as they went off to Sussex, New Brunswick to sign it. And they were refused again. So where does Richard end up doing his wartime service? In the number 2 Construction Battalion. And who was there 70 years later at the reunion organized by the Black Cultural Center, or Black Society? The story of the number 2 Construction Battalion began haunting me when I was at Dalhousie University. Bit of a starving student, working my way through an undergraduate, which I never imagined was possible because I really didn't have an education. And people like this man here created things and opportunities for people like me to go to school. And the late Senator Calvin Ruck was there doing a little presentation on his book, so I went and I became instantly haunted by the story. But you know, I wrote an undergraduate paper, and I kind of thought as a history student, as a history geek, thinking about graduate school, I was done with the story. But the story was not done with me. One summer, Henry Bishop helped save me from hot dogs and beans and white bread and hired me to work at the Black Cultural Center. And while I was out there, I want to say it was 1993, but maybe that's just me living a fantasy. Senator Ruck was coming with other people to organize a reunion. We organized celebrations here in Pictou. And every day that he was at the Black Cultural Center, he came into my office and sat across from me and said, you know, no one's done a real history of the number 2. And I would say, yes, sir, that's very true, that's very true. I was profoundly interested in 17th, 18th, 19th century history. And please, who put the dais in front of the Hector? Because when I walked down and realized the Hector was there, if it wasn't for the bagpipes, I might have forgot to come out, because that's the type of history and that era that I used to be really, really fascinated by. And eventually, Henry and the late Mr. Borden would come into my office and pretend to be upset with Senator Ruck because I wasn't doing any work, and they'd pretend to be upset with me for not doing any work. But, you know, they would then leave, and then they'd come back a half hour later, and then they'd leave, and then they'd come back an hour later, and it kind of went like that for the whole summer. So ultimately, when I decided to do graduate studies, the number 2 Construction Battalion became my thing, and I got absolutely lost in what is there. I've been looking at this story for almost a few decades, and I'm still nowhere near saying, you know, this is definitive and this is definitive. I want to mention, because he's not here with us, a little bit about how and when the story started becoming more public. So this reunion, this thing that happens here was a big part of it. We started seeing little bits and hints, because this leads to media, and this leads to other things. Cousin Robert Downey, who's not here with us today. Can I get everyone to say hello to Robert?
Hey, Robert. Hello, Robert.
Did you hear that, Robert? Just say hello. Cousin Robert Downey, also a descendant of men from the number 2 Construction Battalion, in the 100th anniversary of the number 2, came to Canada Post. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Canada Post's absolutely amazing Black History Month commemorative stamp program. It was our brother, cousin Robert, that came forward with the idea for the number 2 Construction Battalion. It's also, Robert was with us on the advisory committee. This quilt here is a piece of his. And the first thing, besides, you know, because I've been living in Ottawa, staring at the ocean when I first got into Pictou, the very first thing that I saw, I think they're Tyneses. Are you Tyneses? In the jerseys for the number 2? Desmond. Did I say Tynes or Desmond? Brothers, can you stand up?
Desmond's.
Show us these. Anybody know these jerseys? This is the complete brainchild of cousin Robert Downey, creating these jerseys and asking people if they want to buy them. Some people put the names of their descendant on the back. Other people play with the idea of their number, of their whatever their regimental number was. But it's an absolutely wonderful thing. And brothers, you just lifted my heart when I came into town. From that reunion that I spoke about, our good, wonderful Senator Ruck was there. And he documented it, he wrote it down, he turned it into Canada's Black Battalion book. That book started making headway in places and started inspiring many of us to do all kinds of work on the history of the number 2 Construction Battalion. The jerseys that I wanted to mention, and I'm really glad that the engineers are here, because Robert is also part of something that we've started to figure out with the number 2 Construction Battalion, because this isn't just, the minister said it, this isn't just a history of a bunch of guys that went to war one day. This is a history of Canada going back and Canada going forward. And what we discovered in some of the work that we're doing is that there's men in the number 2 Construction Battalion who were involved with the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. We're doing a thing in Ottawa where we're making commemoration to the number 2, we're making commemoration to the Hockey League by having a commemorative game every year. Now, I'm not just mentioning the game because I'm the most winning coach of the series. There's a number 2 connection because last game, did any of you guys know? Last game, a contingent of the engineers came and joined us in the game to help us make this connection between the league and the number 2 Construction Battalion. And there's all kinds of stories that can happen from that. I have to be mindful of the time because I know Kevin's probably timing me, which is always a good thing. I want to go to when the apology talk began. Former MP Gordon Earl is the one who's going to launch this thing with connections. Do you have constituents of Gordon Earl? The guy, absolutely fantastic guy. Absolutely fantastic. I wasn't even in his riding, and I could tell that he was a fantastic MP by the way people approached him. He reconfigured and sort of revived the letters and the conversation that the late George Gordon had been pushing us towards all along. And that's what got the whole talk about the apology going. And from there, we started hearing that there was talk about an advisory committee. Now I honestly don't know if I heard it from Kathy Grant or cousin Robert Downey first, but I heard it from both of them kind of in the same time. And they said, oh, they're doing this, they're going to do consultations. And I said, that's great, that's wonderful. Let me know when the consultations are. And then they both called me back and said, that's not why we told you. You need to be there. So I called Russell, and Russell said, oh, see ya, you're on my call list. I'll send you the details for the meeting that's going to happen next week. Russell didn't ask me if I wanted to join. Russell just said, the meeting's, you're on my call list, the meeting's next week. So, you know, whatever Russell tells me to do or sends me to do, I can do. Now, I was kind of excited when I started to find out that this infamous Mighty Maroon machine was going to be providing the sort of military infrastructure behind us to provide the machinery to make all of our dreams happen. I was mostly excited because I was saying, oh, there's a regiment named after the Jamaican Maroons. But I was wrong. That's not where the name comes from. But nevertheless, we started this thing, and it was absolutely amazing. The collection of people that were there, we did consultations across the country. There was an absolutely stunning, amazing collection of people that were part of those conversations. And I want to take a second, if I can, to just offer 3 things that really stood out for me in that process and the way that the process was designed and supported. Almost everybody on that National Advisory Committee, and there's a lot of really strong-minded people with some really, really strong, solid ideas. Almost every one of the people on that committee relented some idea or a portion of the idea that they had when it conflicted with the bulk of what we were hearing in community consultations. And that really blew me away, because you know, when you're in a room with people with strong minds, and you're sitting across from the power that can say, yeah, okay, sure. For people to go, no, I need to give up me for this. Was really special to see. Russell and Colonel Barry Pritchard, Barry's here, right? The Colonel's here?
Yeah.
Of course they're here. They're at the console running sound and lights and cueing things. These cats blew my mind. We gave those guys a hell of... We gave those guys a really hard time. We really rode those guys, and they didn't give up. They stayed in the fight. They listened to us just tear them apart and throw them around the room. And they would come back with, okay, so this is what you mean? And we'd say, yes, that's what we mean. And then they'd have to go take it to the minister. And of course, going through the minister, and going through this person, and going through that person, that was quite a ride. And then they'd come back with sometimes things that we did not want to hear. And just their ability to stick it out. When it said, I didn't finish the sentence, will you let me? Just was quite amazing. And then the last thing that I want to say about that was what I think I want to call the Ruck factor. And that was Mr. Douglas Ruck. Because the role that he had, I think he went way beyond what the job description was. And he came, to my mind, to my way of living that experience, he kind of came in like, those wise, patient uncles that let you do things your mom and dad won't let you do. But at the same time, they won't let you disrespect your aunties. They won't let you walk into church with a hat on your head. I always had that feeling in his company. And so I just want to say that, he had this amazing way to come in, hear everything we were saying, account for everything that we were saying. If and when Barry and Russell were losing their minds because they thought they weren't getting across to us, he could bring that in. And it was really important. I know I'm way over time probably because that's what I do, and please forgive me. I want to say a few minutes about what I call the Day of Days, and that was the day of the apology. It wasn't until I spoke with one of my thesis advisors when I got back to Ottawa, and we're still in contact with each other for many years, and he said to me, it must be amazing to watch the history work that you do come alive. And to be on that field that day and to see all those descendants and to see all those people and to see the work that the Canadian Forces people put in to make it happen, and to be on that field where those men walked and to hear the words from the Prime Minister and the apology. And those were words that I want to say we fought over. We fought over those words. There was people on the committee, we fought over we fought each other over the words that went into that apology. We fought PMO over words that went into that apology. We fought DND over words that went into that apology. In all of those fights, there was never anything that I would call disrespect or disregard. It was a whole bunch of people with some real serious ideas about how you say something about this thing that happened in this country. And so it was very special for me to be standing there on that field and hear and we even fought about the Prime Minister. There was a fight amongst us all. Is it the Minister of Defense? Is it the Prime Minister? Is it the Governor General? And again, when we started seeing from what we were hearing in the consultations, that the majority, because I wanted the Governor General, I'll be clear, I wanted to be the Governor General. When we saw that the majority of the people that were coming to the consultations wanted the Prime Minister, that's what we went for. And Minister Anand was unbelievably gracious. Because, as ministers will know, there are certain things that become your baby, that you are really intent on delivering. And as a Minister of the Crown, she delivered on that. But then to take that moment on the Day of Days and say, you take the mic, you say it. was very special to see. I said before it's the last thing, but now it's the last thing. From the recognition, from the work that we did, one of the recommendations was for memory and preservation and teaching and all these things. I am absolutely beside, see, I'll be happy doing this story. I do this story all the time. I'm just freaking out. I go to the archives. I see things that Mary Beth does. I'm happy in my own little universe of the number 2. But what absolutely blows my mind is to see all these things that are coming out from the number 2 construction. All these communities that are taking this money and that money and the other piece, and they're standing up monuments and memorials. They're putting things on church walls. There's one on the other side over there. Every time I come into an old church, I look for one. There's one over there for the members of this congregation from the First World War. There's websites popping up all over the place from this Black Historical Society or this group at a university, and it's absolutely wonderful to see. What I want to say is that the history lives. We have gone so far from those moments, when we can imagine men sitting around telling their stories to each other, but not a lot of people knowing what it was. The pictures and the stories that started coming off the mantelpieces, and people, associating them with names, it's just absolutely remarkable. I'll end with something that I got from the beautiful Mary Beth. We don't know, do we know yet if that reunion ever happened?
Not sure. I just got the letter.
In 1920, 1922? Yeah. Colonel Sutherland was drafting text for a reunion for the number 2 construction battalion. A reunion that we don't know whether or not it happened, but boy, oh boy, we'd like to know. What I want to do with what I know from that letter is to give it to you all. Because what Sutherland says in that letter, I think, is a reflection of all of you here today. He says that as we have this reunion, and it's written as like his speech, all of us could not be here today because we have these distances to travel. We are coming, tell me if I get this right, my dear. We are coming from as far south as Tennessee and as far north as, I forget the place north. We are coming from the east and we are coming from the west. And what a better way to imagine the number 2 construction battalion. That even these people came from all around the world to be in this thing. And the difficulty that they would have had in 1920 of coming from all around the places in the world just to be back there. And today, all of you and me and whoever else is listening to us, wherever they're listening, we're all around the world and we're unified around this story. So I want you all to help keep it alive. To go research something that you want to research and tell a story that you want to tell. Try to make it based on what you can find. That'll make History Geeks like me happy, but don't wait for me to make you happy. Go and look at it. Share this story. Keep telling this story. There's so much more that we still don't know. This is, as my darling minister said, this is Black history. This is Canadian history. I thank you all very, very much for being patient with me. Thank you.
Well, seeing through your words and comments, you can see and feel the passion that you have. Also, I believe it was part of your destiny, because anytime you try to get off track, you're always brought back on by situations, individuals. And we really appreciate that, because a lot of people have destinies, but they'll they'll turn away from it. You didn't. So it means a lot. And I know there's a lot more to come. Thank you. As we bring today's remembrance ceremony to a close, let us take one final moment to reflect on the courage, dignity, and enduring legacy of the men of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. Today, we have gathered not only to remember their service, but to honor the strength it took for them to serve a country that did not always fully honor them in return. In the face of racism, exclusion, and injustice, they stood firm. They answered the call. They carried themselves with pride, discipline, and determination. Their legacy continues to speak to us. It reminds us that remembrance is not only about looking back, it is also about how we choose to move forward. The story of the No. 2 Construction Battalion calls on each of us to build bridges where there have been barriers, to lift up those whose voices have been overlooked, and to continue the work of justice, inclusion, and respect. On behalf of the organizers, thank you to everyone who joined us today, to all who participated in the ceremony, and to those who continue to preserve and share this important legacy. Following the ceremony, we invite everyone to join us outside for refreshments, generously provided courtesy of Honorary Colonel Rob Sobey. We are grateful for his continued dedication, generosity, and support of this important remembrance. Thank you, and may we always remember, I shouldn't even say always, we will remember.